Hello everyone. This little video that I'm doing here today is about a two-value drawing. And so in the figure drawing class, you guys were to be doing two figures with two values, keeping all the edges sharp, and then you're doing another two figures. And with those, of course, you're having soft and sharp edges. This particular one is our first master copy. And this master copy is done with just two values. So when we reduce a master copy to two values, since unlike the model, if it's a nude model, you just got shadow and light on the skin, now is what's going to happen is there are areas that might be mid-tones in the prints that you're going to use, and other areas dark and light. So is what I'm going to be doing is working from this Rembrandt painting. You guys will select a painting that I have posted there online. And with this, because we can reduce the light of his face, of course, into a white. And so is what I've got to do then is keep the light of the face light connected to this collar and possibly even to this highlight that's on the leather part of the collar. However, the shadow is all dark. His hair, the lights included, would fall into the dark range, because now is what we're doing is we're taking the value scale, dividing it in half, which means all of our midtones like this become part of our dark family. And is what I'm going to do is take the top part of this and reduce it to black, which means his head's going to disappear up here, his hair. However, I will take the liberty, and these are the choices you're going to have to make. This is technically a middle tone. These middle tones I'm going to bind into a dark area as a silhouette, but this middle tone and this middle tone I'm going to leave light. So depending on what you're doing, some middle tones can remain light, because if this was all dark, I would lose this edge of his hair, I would lose this, I'd lose everything but this light. So you can take middle tones and turn them into lights if it works to your advantage when you're reducing something to two values. Otherwise, midtones can be reduced to darks. If I was to leave the light on his hair, the midtone that's like this, and kept this light, it wouldn't look good. So you have to do what works the best for what you have. So the easiest way, like we talked about with reducing something at the beginning, and with our frame or with our print, we have to come up with a frame of reference. This frame of reference is representing the width and the height of the painting. So is what you have to measure. You have to measure this distance, and you have to measure it into this distance, how much is left. And I already did that. So I measured this into this much is left, and that's roughly the dimension of this. So you want to get the height to the width when you're laying out this painting. The other thing we talked about, the envelope. So is what I'm going to do is I'm going to see that this is the middle of the painting. So I'm going to take from this high point his hair, which almost comes to the top of the frame, almost. And so it does that. So it's so close. So I'm going to say that's there. And I'm going to find roughly where his coat comes close to this edge, doesn't hit it till here. And so is what I'm going to do is do an envelope. On the other side, I'm going to take it and just run a general line to this corner, which is pretty much where the coat is going there. So with that in mind, I'm going to take this and run a guideline, and I'm going to run it like this. It comes close, and then it hits, something like that. And this side, a very general line going this direction. So it's going to give me a little bit of the idea of my negative space and a little bit of my placements. Now the other line that I was kind of looking at with this painting is I like where he's got this collar, so I'm watching the angle on this collar. And so when I look at it, I'm going to try to find that angle and then strike that in. And so I'm going to put it about here. So I'm going to go after a few major directions, because this angle of the collar, it doesn't line up perfectly to his coat or his chest, which will be out a little further, but it comes close enough for me to try to get that in place. And so off of this line that I'm seeing, and off of this line that I'm seeing, I'm going to roughly place in here I'm going to watch the negative space, this negative space to this negative space, and I'm going to say this is close. I might have to juggle it as it develops, but I'm going to say this is close, and I'm going to kind of place this angle of his neck, okay, to try to get that in place. The collar is out here. I do want to watch my rough halfway point, and roughly here, it's somewhere about here, and so I want to kind of watch it. It's close to this collar. So I want to try to keep that in mind. So I'm going to try to say, is that roughly halfway? And I should say, well, no. So it's a little bit lower. So I want to try to figure out roughly where that is. So I'm going to say it's here. So that's pretty close to where I'm thinking about where his neck is going to be. And my midway point is close. So I'm trying to come up with a few guidelines, a few measurements. So I know his neck comes up a little higher. From that, I see a general line. So what I'm going to follow is just general lines. So I'm going to follow a general line, and I'm going to come around. You might be able to see it in the camera, but I can kind of see a little bit of the placement of his head in there. And I'm going to come around with a general shape and try to think a little bit then of the general character of his head. So it's going to go in there like that. Now, I'm going to watch this chin in light of this line that I've got here. And so I'm going to say it's pretty close. This is the back of his collar, watching the negative space. And so you want to set this up a little bit. And so now I'm going to watch his coat and what it does. And then it comes out and down and hits that edge. So it's roughly like that. Now, I am going to watch another few points. I'm going to watch this edge of roughly maybe where that hair might come out in light of the collar. I'm just going to put general points until I can figure out his ear. Center line of head, I'm going to watch how he might bring this curve around. So if I can get a center line on that face, kind of watching my distances. So loosely structure that. So around we are here, and I'm going to pull this probably to about here. So we all know the proportions of the head. So I'm going to guess at this. And so we know midway is our eyes. So if I was to take from chin, this is guessing, and it's a good way to do it. And then you check it and say, okay, that's a good guess. So that lands dead center, which is his eyes. And you want to check these things when you're drawing. So if I go from there to there, it goes right to that line. He's got his head in a good proportion. This is the line that I'm seeing. Hair might come out to about here. I'm watching negative spaces and how it might hit now down here. And then his jacket's going to come out a little bit further. So now I'm watching his head in relation to negative spaces. So it's a little different than just drawing a head not in a frame of reference, because now you've got to try to get all your pieces to work, okay? So I'm going to guess at the angle of the nose, and remember with our proportions, now this is a guess, with our proportions from chin to base of nose should go to brow, from brow to hairline. And so his hairline, when we look at it, so we're going there to brow. Actually, that's going all the way up to, say, about here. So what I'm going to do is raise the nose up ever so subtly. So I guess I could probably put it about there. That'll be a better placement. So from there to the brow, and brow pretty close. So now we're pretty close on target. So let's say there, brow should be about here. So if I'm taking this angle, going to brow, going to hairline, now we're pretty close. So anyways, brow is going to be up here. Base of nose, somewhere in this area. Parting of his lips, I'm just going to place it in very loosely. Edge of lower lip. I'm going to kind of watching a little bit of the mapping out of the shadow, even though it's at a loose stage at this point, not knowing if everything's just right. So it's what I'm watching is the shadow mapping of that edge, okay? So everything's pretty early yet, but keep it in mind. With the eyes, I can drag those across. I can then begin to see roughly maybe placement of the ears. So say if his neck coming across to where the lips are, so pretty close. And I'm going to get rid of this guideline because it's going to mess me up. And so I want to find out ear, touch lower, and I'm going to place in a shape. So I'm going to place in a shape like that, and I'm going to watch the height of it. And so somewhere in through there, so I'm going to start to generalize these shapes. His hair is crossing over his forehead this way. You might be able to see it in the design, maybe as far over as this eyebrow. So I'm going to come up with some loose placements for the movement of his hair, of where these possibilities might be, just so I can see the thing in its entirety. Angles in about at his mouth, and this hair comes all the way down and ends up in a place like that. So anyways, that'll give me a loose idea of my negatives to my positives. The bottom of the nose, I'm going to check it one more time. I'm going to bring it across, and it's coming down to here. Nose, I'm going to have to watch out for. It's going to have to come up a little bit. So anyways, we've got our loose placements. I will watch the angle of the jaw a little bit here, and I'm going to try to clarify this just a little better of where these lines might be of the color, because this is going to be one of my important shapes here. And where that light's going to fall is important. So I'll place that one. And we will bring it
You're fine.
through.
It was just clear.
Okay. So anyways, we're watching those placements. So with this now, is what I'm going to watch is where is the bridge of the nose? So the bridge of the nose, we talked a lot about with the heads with the glabella. This is the glabella when you look at it. So it's going to go over the bridge of his nose, and the base of the nose, I'm going to put a little angle, let's just say for the thickness of the nostril. I'm going to run a very little plane underneath that I see, and I'm going to bring it around the ball of the nose and do this, and just to come up with a shape. This angle is going to connect to the glabella. I'm going to watch my angle. So I'm going to connect that. I'm going to watch a little bit of this shadow shape. And underneath the nose, you see a strong shadow edge going this way, a little bit of a cast shadow under the nose. And then under that, connected to the philtrum, it's going to move into the philtrum and then around and down the other side. So the parting of the lips, say about here, slight angle on the edge of the mouth, say that way. This is going to come up. So now I'm going to kind of watch these pieces between the upper lip and this shape that I just drew. Angle of the shadow here. And this is all going to be in shadow, okay? Now I'm going to leave that temporarily until I begin to get a little bit with the eyes resolved on the top part. So anyways, this is the glabella. I'm going to watch this angle, This angle is crucial. So I'm going to watch this through here. So this angle is usually this angle. So I'm going for the direction in between here. I'm going to watch the shape of the shadow that's going to exist this way, and I'm going to try to see it as if this upper eyelid was gone and there's just a form coming around here. So I'm going to try to watch the distance between the eyebrow and lightly kind of feel out the placement. If there wasn't an eye in there, or wasn't an eyelid in there, just kind of following around the shape. And then this coming up to the eyebrow, and then where the eyebrow roughly makes its turn. So I've got to be careful with my distances here. So I'm going to bring this in ever so little. All of this just to kind of set up before we get involved with those values. I will take, on this side, I'm going to block in this dark. So I'm going to start to look at these dark shapes. This is going to come through. All of it being shadow. In here, if there was, I'm going to make a little angle for where I would want the feeling of the lid. This would be the upper lid, and is what I'm going to do is lift just a little light of where I would want it to be. This is going to be the shadow it's all within. And I'm going to connect these darks. So now I'm on this mid-tone piece of paper because of the charcoal. I'm going to lift and get rid of the mid-tone because in this drawing there's not going to be any mid-tones. Anyways, this is going to come up. All of this is going to be in shadow. I got to feel around the cheek, even though I'm going to lose it. I'm going to feel around the cheek. So just take your time with the shapes. And I'm going to come around the side of his cheek, how I see the light being left. Hair, all going to tie together. Cheek, hair, everything melts. Everything melts in. Mouth on this side gets lost. This side of the lower lip is gone. It's going to be a little bit of a correction on that lip once I get lifting the light out of there. All of this now goes together. I want to watch specifically the shape underneath. All ties together. This whole top part is going to tie together along with this. And bring this all in. Coming down to where the hair is, jumping underneath. And of course, all of this will be dark. So a lot is going to be edited because of our two value combination. Bear with me, just going to mass it out real quick. And then eventually I'll start to become a little more specific with where this hair is going to end up. And maybe just to show that this is hair creeping over, I might put in a lock. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna lift some light out of there. So since it's two values, this for you guys would just all be light. And now I've got to get it coming down to where the neck is. This area will all just connect together. And this. I might even connect a little bit of the light in there. This would all fall into light. So we'll just move that over a touch. Our lights here from his jaw are going to connect right into the collar. You're going to be very specific with how these lights work from the neck, because the neck is in a little bit. Eventually there's a little shadow under there, but again, keep it two values. There'd be maybe a touch of gradation there, not much. And then I'd have to watch this edge. Watch edges, which is, on this paper, it's a little challenging to get a slightly softer edge. But as you were doing in your other drawings prior to this one from the model, watch where there's a soft edge, very soft edge right there. And then this is going to turn into light. So our middle tone that's in reality is no longer going to be a middle tone. Watch the negative spaces as they come down. I'd have to play with this a little bit because this actually comes down a little lower like this. Now that I look at it, and this comes down lower, it's below his chin. And then this comes down a little bit, more like that, which I think will be a little better. And then his hair comes right about the chin line. And then on this side, I'm going to take this angle, change it just very little. And then I want to try to discover just a little bit where the edge of his face would be. To figure out this angle of the hair. So sometimes you might have to go and rediscover, even though it's all lost, you might rediscover an edge. If there is an eye in there, I'm just going to place it so it gives me an idea at an angle. And then his hair, it's going to come out a little bit, end about to here, and then it gets very narrow, connecting to the face. And then it begins to take a little bit of a perfectly straight edge, and then you begin to see it turn. All of these areas would connect. And then just a little bit more with this light around the mouth and stuff, just so we can get the shapes right. And then we're going to end this. So this collar is going to be here. You're going to get a light area. I would put it on the area that comes down this way as the reflection. I would just lighten it up as part of the light pattern. And then a couple other areas here, and we're gonna leave it. So watch your edges, like around the base of the nose. This cast shadow would be razor sharp as you place them, and a little softer there. Check the measurement, corner of the mouth, roughly the corner of the eye. Close, might be a little bit off, but I'm gonna leave it. And then I'm gonna take this area of the lip, just because this would all be light, all be white. And then we'll get rid of the mid-tone on the lip. There'd be a strong angle to where the shadow meets. And then underneath, we'd watch the angle of the shadow. So shape, take your time with these shapes. This is gonna roll over the lower lip, wrap underneath, and then angle down. And then it makes an abrupt change for the turn of the chin. Watch the feel of the turn of the chin. So the turn of the chin going this way. And watch its shapes. Keep looking at shapes as much as we can as you develop it. So on this, it's two values. Watching edges, watching your shapes. Where your edges are sharp, keep them sharp. Where they're soft, like on this chin, we gotta soften it. And so the same with yours. You know, you're gonna be working, very hard with the charcoal on this paper though. So I'm gonna try to just do it like this and keep the edge hopefully remain soft. And then this stuff would all fall into darkness, and the collar would begin to angle this way, so there'd be a little bit of a sharpness to it. And we'll bring this up a little bit. So anyways, you're gonna take your time and you're gonna watch all of the little subtleties. I'm gonna probably leave this at like this, but it'll give you the idea. Do values that are in the background of the design. Some of you, there might even be something going on back there besides just a flat dark background, or in this case, I'm turning it into a light and a dark. But do whatever the print is going to tell you to do as far as the values. And again, you got to decide with these midtones, because with two values, the middle can either turn into the light or it can turn into the dark. But you got to make that choice. You can't have it both ways when you're doing it. And that's kind of the hard thing with two values. As we get into three values, it becomes a lot easier to do, okay? So I'm gonna leave this like this. Enjoy working from an artist. We're gonna be working from artists in the future and taking these and breaking them further and further down.